Welcome back to Irskine Overnight. Don't forget, the fourth hour tonight, coming up, we have T-Bone Burnett, the musical director of Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? He's produced Elvis Costello, Los Lobos, Roy Orbison, Jackson Brown, Counting Crows, Spinal Tap, etc. And it's going to be a fun evening. We've discussed many examples of mankind's genocide, from the 15 million who died in Russian communist anti-Christian Holocaust, to the German Nazi, anti-Jewish, and others Holocaust with 6 million plus dead, to the various so-called ethnic cleansings which occur to this day. Another topic we've discussed on Irskine Overnight has been the biological atrocities committed by our own government against our own people. From congressional testimony, we learned of our own government spraying LSD in New York from the exhaust of a Ford to study the effects. We also heard documented evidence before Congress of spraying viruses in the Bay Area rapid transit, causing both illness and death. Finally, the men down in Alabama who were tested for syphilis and allowed to die, which the President Clinton just recently apologized for. They were never treated, much like the Nazis with these syphilis experiments. This is not fiction. This is truth. These are post-World War II examples of our own government committing crimes as heinous as any we tried the Nazis for in Nuremberg. These crimes are continuing today, according to the various people we've had on about chemtrails, experiments upon our own soldiers during the Gulf War, and my guest tonight, Dr. Boyd E. Graves, has spent 8 years studying AIDS origins. He's credited as discoverer of the 1971 special virus flowchart and presented this evidence to the international scientific and medical research communities as absolute proof of laboratory origins of AIDS on August 21st, 1999. Graves' research continues passing intense international scientific scrutiny. Dr. Graves is celebrating his 25th year as a Naval Academy graduate and is respected internationally. He's a civil rights leader. He's an AIDS activist. Revenue from his new book, State Origin, The Epidemic of the Laboratory Birth of AIDS, is used to fund the People's Legal Case Graves versus the President of the United States. Dr. Graves has the smoking gun to expose the planned, diabolical, systematic murder of an entire race of people. Many believe the New World Order has begun their avowed intention of decreasing the world population. As Jim Marrs so eloquently put it in his book, Rule by Secrecy, it's either by accident or it's a conspiracy. Boyd says AIDS is certainly no accident, and tonight we will present the evidence on Irskine Overnight. It is with great pride that I present the Honorable Dr. Boyd Graves. Dr. Graves, are you there?
Well, I'm almost not sure, Irskine. I appreciate that stellar opening, and I appreciate that greatly. Thank you for having me.
You're more than welcome. It is an honor having you. You have worked for 8 years, 8 long years, discovering the origin of AIDS, and this is something that you just could not take as being accidental or coming from the green monkeys. It wasn't people making love to monkeys in Africa that started AIDS. Am I correct?
Well, I think hopefully by the end of this evening, we can put the out of Africa origin for AIDS to rest. We do that here on our end very, very quickly by presenting the flowchart of the federal program that made the AIDS virus. In fact, they spent $550 million to make this virus, and we have the research logic of how it was done from A to Z. That is correct.
And I like what you say here. The fingerprint of man will eternally linger in the genetic sequencing of the AIDS virus. The scientific proof is compelling and substantial, and the missing data experiments and contracts have been found. Let us work together to unmask the last secret of the 20th century. This is the secret that has been killing people. And this is a secret which you say can be reversed. They can turn it on, they can turn it off, and we've got to get to the bottom of it. It is our soul as a nation that is at risk when you have something of this heinous a crime going on.
You know, what we're about here initially is that the first prong of our platform is that we are calling for an immediate independent review of this federal program called the Special Virus. And for the people listening who may not have had any prior knowledge that this kind of concrete evidence is available, we are up on the net with the flowchart. I don't know if you've seen it yet yourself or not, Irskine. Have you?
I've seen it. I've got a copy of it here, and it exactly is the smoking gun. And you can go to Boyd, BOYDGRAVES.com, and you can find out where AIDS came from. The flowchart's up there. You've got lots and lots of documents up there.
Well, yes, sir, we do. And, you know, the thing that we back up probably more so than anything else is that we are on our 888 toll-free line for people who want to see the presentation of the flowchart, not only when we took it to the international medical scientific community, but also when we presented the flowchart in the United States. We've got a two-video solid package with the flowchart for $49.95. And can I give the 888 number that we have?
888-842-6419. Is that right? Give it again.
Yes, sir, it is. And, you know, that helps each and every person who wants to see the presentation of this flowchart to the international medical scientific community. Please call.
Well, you've got a certain amount of people out there, Boyd, who are going to say, I don't have AIDS, and maybe it's God's will, and I don't care about it. I don't want to talk about it. Well, it may start with AIDS today, but next time it may be something that will affect you, and this is affecting the humanity of the United States. This is something which, even if you haven't been touched by it, and it's hard to find somebody in this country who hasn't been, but even if you haven't been, the next one could be after you.
Well, you know, we just recently had an announcement on the Human Genome Project. Are you familiar with that?
Certainly. We had a gentleman talking about it.
Well, you know, there's an underlying necessity for the Human Genome Project, as we are beginning to find out, because I think the major report that came from that announcement the other day was that we are all 99.9% identical. Are you aware of that?
Absolutely.
And you know what has happened here with this biological program, the Special Virus? The 0.01 of a difference between us.
That's what they're looking for, isn't it?
Apparently has some breakdown in the blood markers of the different races. And they were able to make this determination. I believe the date was April 4, 1969, when the Fort Detrick in Maryland announced to the world, in the presence of former President Nixon, that they had found, indeed, the initiators for human life. And they also found a way to stop human life.
Now, that goes back to 1969 in this project, and a lot of it went back to some directives put out by former President Nixon. On April 4th, 1969, President Nixon landed by helicopter at Fort Detrick. He wanted to be there when the scientists announced that they had figured out the mechanisms of life. And that was when they said, they didn't say this, but that is when it came out that we could create an ethnic cancer.